Actually, this is awesome.
I have a spork.
All right, are we ready?
Okay. I call this meeting of the Budget Committee to order. It's being held in person. The public is invited to watch live on the city's YouTube channel, Comcast Cable Channel 30 in the city limits, or via Zoom using the link on the meeting webpage. There will be opportunities for the public to speak during the community comment time. Written comments may be submitted by email to finance@milwaukieoregon.gov. When it's time to make public comments, staff will monitor the comment cards and email inbox. We will take comments in the order they are received and seen. Spanish translation services are available upon request. The public is asked to request translation services at least 48 hours before the meeting. Translation services are available in other languages as well. So we will begin with introductions, starting with me. I'm Leslie Schachner, the Budget Committee Chair, and I'm a citizen member.
I'm Lisa Beatty. I'm the mayor, so a council member.
William Johnson, community member.
Sophie Sherman Burton, community member.
Michael Osborne, finance director.
Emma Sagor, city manager.
David Chitzazan, community member.
Adam Coster-Body, city council member.
And we have somebody on Zoom, 2 people on Zoom.
Robert Massey, I'm on the city council. I'm on Zoom.
I don't see our other counselor on Zoom yet. I see someone labeled Milwaukie Public Works as an attendee, but I don't believe that is our counselor.
Since he's sick, maybe he's not going to make it. Okay. So our next order of business is the approval of the minutes from the meeting of November 18th, 2024. Does anyone have any comments or corrections to the minutes from that meeting?
Motion to approve.
I need to say first. I did have edits in terms of making the sentences read clearer, and that they are all scrivener's errors. There is no actual change to the meaning of anything, which I have already given to Michael and Judy. So having said that, David?
Motion to approve.
A second.
The minutes have been, there's been a motion to approve and a second for the minutes. Is there any discussion, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? No. Okay, the motion carries. Next, we will move to our new agenda item, which is our Finance Director, Michael Osborne, will present follow-up on questions that were asked at the previous meeting.
Thank you. There were a couple questions here. One was, why is library spending so low? It was at 42% on general fund expenditures. The answer is it's now at 102%. There was an error in the anticipated actual calculation last quarter that we have caught and corrected. Question number 2 was, what's the balance between 1.5 and 2 times overtime pay for police? I think the question was, are we paying at 1.5 or 2 times of salary? And according to the MPEA contract, it's 1.5 times salary. The other question is, it was in regards to compression. I think we were all trying to figure out a little bit more of what compression is. I talked to the county and I'm a little more confused on what compression is. So I'm working on that, and we can come back to that.
So when you figure it out, will you send out a sort of a summary report that
Yes.
we can see, not waiting for the next meeting, but just
Yeah.
give us what it is?
Yes.
And hopefully maybe links to resources.
It's a very complicated calculation that they have, that there's a maximum for each different type of government revenue between education and general government. There's a maximum that there can be for the compression. When I find a good definition, I'll send it out to everybody.
I was going to say, I would suggest taking a look at LOC. I think LOC, I've heard talks on what compression is several times. They haven't all stuck, but I do think they probably have some fairly decent description of what it is.
Well, and if they have like a training slide deck, that would be very helpful. I do remember when I first came on this time that we had a presentation, I think, from Oregon Department of Revenue on it. But at that point, I was not, it was over my head. So, yeah, any resources that you can give us that other people have put together, that would be helpful also.
Do we know, I mean, I guess my recollection is Milwaukie hasn't been hit very hard by compression historically. Is that true?
So from speaking to Dina at the county last week, that we do have a fair amount of compression, but she said it's not in the residential areas, it's in the commercial areas.
Okay,
Interesting,
interesting, okay.
interesting.
And Dina is a great resource. I've asked her a number of questions over the last week, so I can follow up with her.
Okay. Okay, any more?
That was it?
Okay, we will now move to the community comments. I am opening the meeting to any community members who would like to discuss any city business with the committee. Those wishing to speak that are not at City Hall, please email finance@milwaukieoregon.gov or raise your hand in Zoom by dialing *9 to raise your hand. If you're on the phone. You can also write a comment in the Zoom chat to indicate you would like to speak. Before you make your comment, please state your name and city of residence for the record. If you would like the city to follow up with you, please submit your contact information to finance@milwaukieoregon.gov. As the committee has other business items on the agenda this evening, speakers will be limited to 3 minutes each. Because the information provided during the community comments may be new, staff will respond at the next committee meeting to those comments that require follow-up. And I have a speaker card from Elvis Clark. So come forward.
Press any, oh, there you go. Elvis Clark, City, Milwaukie, Ardenwell neighborhood. I wanted to talk about the general fund stability that was brought up in the last meeting here. 4 points on, and I submitted a written comment on the first point, is that if you go with a permanent property tax increase, using the permanent rate cap, you have cushion there. The county has told me that the urban renewal district would take a portion of that, and it looks like over 10%. So that's the one point I had to make. And the second was that I looked at the property tax document for the county document for this year's general fund for Milwaukie. It looked like it brought in about 10.6 million. Versus the 10.1 that was in the budget document for 25, fiscal year 25. So maybe there's some good news there. A second thing was that I'm looking at the second quarter report here, and the FTE that the city's running on now is like 140, in the 140 range, and the budget has a 150. So I was wondering if there would not be the ability to operate or have the budget at 145, say, that would allow, I think, give the police department back the whole, according to the document, the second quarter update, and relieve that overtime cost, some of that overtime cost that they're accruing, and allow the police to be more rested when they're out there making arrests or stops. And then also the last point is that the water and building funds have millions of dollars in reserves built up, and I was wondering if that could not be tapped or something arranged to where we could maybe, like I said, take some of that there, or any excesses that we might have there. And that concludes my remarks. I wanted to get in the record here. Thank you all.
Thank you. So we'll just take this under advisement? Okay. And will you then be responding to Mr. Clark?
What we can do is what we do kind of at the city council meetings. We rarely get verbal public comments. So I really appreciate Mr. Clark coming out tonight. What we do at the city council meetings is at the next meeting, you can ask me to give some follow-up. I think those are all really good and interesting points from Elvis. And so I could provide those to you all for the record.
I guess my thought about that is that we won't meet again for 3 months. And like, I mean, just in terms of the fourth point.
Sure.
We can't actually move from our special
Building fund.
funds into the general fund. That alone is not allowed. So,
Right,
I mean, it's
right.
like, we can say that.
What I'd recommend, yeah, definitely. I can have some responses to these today. I mean, I think, you know, the building fund one, that's the easiest. It's a really good point. It's something we scratch our heads over, and we do think about ways that we can make sure all applicable pieces of work are billed, you know, accordingly. So if an engineer or a planner is doing building work, is there a way we can bill that to the fund? But it is true that that is state law that restricts those funds, and so we can't do a gross transfer of building fund revenue into the general fund. But on the other pieces, I just would love to do a little bit more research, and what I can do is make sure we put the responses to it in the minutes that go out to all of you, so that that's on the record.
That would be helpful.
Perfect. Happy to do that.
But there again, the minutes don't go out
For a
until the
while.
next. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So it's your turn, Emma, for our city
It
manager
is.
update.
My turn. Okay, let me make sure all my various technology components are working. So good evening, everyone. It's great to see you again. I'm here to kick us off tonight just by providing some updates from Q2 of fiscal year 25 and the very beginnings of Q3. It was another busy quarter in Milwaukie. It really never is not a busy quarter in Milwaukie, but this last one in particular, you know, it saw all of the fun activity you see around the city in our winter events. It saw council setting new goals, which I'm going to talk about in a second. So we really have been very busy here at the city. I want to just share a few hiring and personnel updates to kick us off. We are currently in the middle of doing interviews for a few exciting positions. One is the economic development coordinator that you all helped approve last year that we'll be using URA dollars to support. So this person will be focused on the downtown and the urban renewal area. Those interviews are happening next week. We're also hiring a new facilities tech after Ed Moore, one of our longtime employees, I think 2 decades of work for the city, retired last month. And then we also are recruiting for a building inspector. This is another position, again, to Mr. Clark's good point, that we do have the staff or the funds in the building fund to allow for hiring, and definitely we have the work demand. It is very challenging, though, to hire. We have had this posting out for a while, and we are struggling to get any qualified applicants for the building inspector position. Part of this is, I think, because the market, you know, public sector building inspector positions aren't really competitive with some private roles that they can get. And so we are doing some market analyses and considering even upclassing that a bit more to see if we can get a more robust pool.
This is an additional building inspector.
This is an additional building inspector, yep, that was approved in the fall. We continue to have some ongoing recruitments for those police positions. We are still understaffed in our police department and doing everything we can to get good folks through that process and through the background process. Our background checks for our police department are very stringent, and so we do have a large number of folks who make it to background and then don't pass through. But it's because we really want to hire the best people to serve our community. And this is an exciting one that I'm happy to share. So ARPA, we love acronyms in government. This was the American Rescue Plan Act. This was sort of the COVID stimulus package passed by the federal government. So we're many years off of the passage of that, and we're coming to the end of sort of ARPA contracts. And we had used ARPA dollars for a lot of different projects, some capital projects, some programmatic costs. A big one we were using it for was the Ardenwald North project. It's a big capital improvement project with water and transportation work. It came in under bid, which was great. We love it when that happens, but that also meant that we had some ARPA dollars that we needed to allocate quite quickly before the end of the year, or we would lose that money. And you can't just spend it on anything. They're very strict guidelines of what you can spend those dollars on. And one of the things you can spend it on is emergency management work. We have a half-time emergency management coordinator. My events coordinator wears one hat for events and one hat for emergency management, and it's never quite worked. The events work kind of eats into the emergency management thing, and I felt like it was getting short shrift. So with the ARPA dollars, we're able to create an emergency management position that will be located out at Public Works, and will really work with our utilities for resilience and emergency planning there. We'll work with community partners on emergency planning, and I think just put us in a much better position without putting a lot of pressure on our general fund. So those ARPA dollars will get us through 2 years of staff time for that position. So that's something that we are happy to be able to add to our workforce. I mentioned council goals. Lucky council got to spend like all of last weekend with me, locked in Chapel Theater at a 2-day retreat, talking about the goals they want to set for the next 3 years. And the reason we're setting 3-year goals will be a particular interest of the Budget Committee. We've always kind of set goals on the off cycle of our biennial budget. And I think that's led to some challenges. It means that we're writing a budget to respond to sort of slightly old goals, and then setting new goals in the middle of a budget and a little bit like, does this still fit? So this 3-year cycle is going to get us back on track. We'll set the goals now, and these will be goals that run through the next biennium. So when we're bringing the next budget to you next year, it will be informed by these 3 policy priorities.
And then afterwards, it'll go back to 2 years, but it will be in sync with the budget.
Exactly, exactly. So,
The side benefit of it is it will also be off sync with the legislative session.
Yes.
Because doing goal setting during the legislative session is, I mean, there's just so much going on.
Yes.
So, yeah.
we're all a little tired. But very excited to share that the 3 goals are economic development. Each of these has sort of a punchy couple word title and then a little bit of a longer explanation. So it's economic development, supporting Milwaukee's business districts and investing in neighborhood hubs. Parks and green space, deliver Milwaukie Bay Park and expand equitable access to green space in Milwaukie, including the restoration of the Kellogg Creek Natural Area through the removal of Kellogg Dam. And affordability, which is identify opportunities for utility relief and expand and support development of affordable housing in Milwaukie, or income restricted housing in Milwaukie. We could talk a lot about these. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I know we've got also lots of good budgety stuff to talk about tonight. I wanted to talk a little bit about police staffing. This is a topic that comes up, I know, quite often in our meetings, and Michael's got a slide later on that talks about some police overtime trends. But I just did want to give an update because we are understaffed in our PD. We also have 4 individuals on administrative leave. I don't have a lot of updates on that. We are kind of at the mercy of the the judicial process there. So we are waiting for grand jury decisions on those, on 3 of those. One is just pending an internal investigation. We also have several staff who are great, but maybe aren't either cleared to be on their own yet. They haven't passed field training or are injured. So, and I always get these numbers a little bit wrong, but I think, we should be at 35 when we are fully staffed, or 36. I think we're at like 31 or 32. And then if you take all the folks who can't work right now, we're still down in that sort of 25, 26 actually being out there. So to make those minimum staffing thresholds, we are still doing 12-hour shifts. And you'll see the commensurate impact this is having on overtime, which has unfortunately trended back up over the last month. We are monitoring it closely, and again, we've got a few things that we're considering to try to stem this sort of chronic issue that we know is having a budgetary impact as well.
Do you have a sense of when the investigations are likely to conclude? I mean, it's theoretically, it doesn't last for.
It doesn't last forever. I believe spring for both of the cases that we're expecting. So, but that's about as much clarity as I've been given from the DA's offices. We also will talk, Michael will talk more about this later, but just want to make sure you can rest assured that we are monitoring, well, as much as you can rest assured, but we are monitoring what's happening at the federal level. It's a little hard to keep pace with all the things coming out every single day, but we are keeping an eye on that. We're thinking about what that means for our budgetary picture and for our staff. And again, Michael will share more specifics later in his presentation. And then tonight, we're not going to share too much on the financial stability strategy. We really want that to be the focus of our April meeting. We're going to dive really deep. But I wanted to share with you that we're continuing analysis on the short list of revenue ideas you helped us generate back in November. We're beginning our kind of comb through the city's fee schedule, which is no small feat. It's like 80 pages. But to really kind of make sure we're doing that cost recovery through our fees and get that ready to bring back to you all for a review and an update when the fiscal year ends. And then we continue to do budget monitoring, which is exactly what we're here to talk about tonight, because that's keeping an eye on that forecast is really important for our overall stability strategy. We also have added one idea to the short list that we're looking at because of some of the things I mentioned before about our police staffing and how, not being able to adequately staff that department then leads to a budgetary drawback. And a couple other cities in our region have utilized a public safety fee on their utility bill in order to have some stable funding, which for their police departments, which then can alleviate some pressure on the rest of general fund. So we're just starting embryonically the kind of analysis on that, but I wanted to daylight that for you because that will be on the list when we bring this back in April.
It's a public, when you say a public safety fee, if it's on the utility bills, that would be paid by everybody that gets a utility bill.
Exactly, yep. Okay. The same way that our SAFE and SSMP rates are. You can design it though in the same way our SAFE and SSMP rates are, where there's low income exemptions or discounts too. Okay. But it'd be like a utility bill or a utility payment. So like I said, not much to share tonight on that. I mean, we're happy to answer any questions you have, but Michael, Matt, and I are deep in the research and analysis weeds right now, and we'll bring that back to you in April. Any questions for me before I hand it over to Michael? William?
Yeah, on the topic of affordability, I figure most of that housing piece is about multifamily development, yeah? Is there any portion directed at single family? Because they don't really build small houses much anymore, but that's where you start.
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question. It's still early days. Council is going to spend kind of the next several months scoping an action plan for each of the goals. I think you're right, though, to say that a lot of our focus and a lot of just frankly the market's focused or the industry's focus on affordable or income restricted housing is in that multifamily. But I know that, Council's talked a lot about wanting to look at affordable home ownership opportunities too, which might be more of a condo product or a townhome product or maybe a single family home product. There's also The county has several scattered sites. Some of those are single-family homes that we are monitoring what the future of those will be. Those might get to be held in a community land trust model was the latest I heard, which then preserves some more single-family home styles. And I know Councilor Khosrowshahi has lots of other ideas up his sleeve that can be related to, either down payment assistance or other ways to kind of support folks in staying in their home and securing housing. So a lot more to come, but I think you're right that the focus has generally been multifamily, but we're trying to look at all of it.
Yeah, I would say that, we have the Sparrow site, which we have said we want it to be homeownership potential.
Yep.
We have the Milwaukie Short Stack, which is a 15-unit cottage cluster that will be a community land trust.
Yeah.
So homeownership. The legislative session includes a bill on trying to make it easier to build condos because we haven't had condos built in Milwaukie in probably 30 years because there's so much litigation over condo construction. And so trying to thread the needle between, not having shoddy construction, but also not having overly long litigation periods, so that there's a bill in the legislature trying to make it easier to build condos. And I think there's a lot of interest behind that because a condo isn't, the ability to do a condo form of ownership is not just about multifamily. It could also be about fourplexes and sixplexes and stuff like that. So it is one of the bills that I am definitely watching and hoping to advocate for. So hopefully we will have some more paths to ownership in the coming years.
Yeah, I had a question going back to the four police officers on administrative leave. I was just looking, and maybe this will be addressed later, but I know there's police officer Sanchez and Acom that are the ones that shot the unarmed person at Taco Bell, Hunter Newton at Taco Bell over there. They're on administrative leave, and Sergeant Foreman was on leave for child pornography investigation.
Yep.
Who's the fourth? I think I missed that one.
We've an additional officer. I'm not sure if I'm at liberty to share their name.
I'm not sure that we should be talking.
It's not due to any kind of criminal or charges.
Sorry, I'm going off of the public statements of the officers when they were put on leave. I don't.
I'm talking about your.
Yeah, I guess, let me just put it this way. If I was, it's a police officer and there's police officers that are put on leave, they're in charge of protecting us.
But there's an investigation.
So why did we make public the child pornography?
I think
Sergeant Foreman.
in that case, the media made that public, and in the fourth individual is just undergoing currently an internal affairs investigation. So without being able to.
Got it. So, okay. So the city, is that okay if I finish? Is that? So just it's city policy to never disclose. I don't know why we're.
You're dealing with unions too.
What?
You're dealing with labor unions, police unions, so there's some restrictions.
Well, yeah, obviously, I'm not trying to dox anybody here. I just want to be can I be very, very clear with that? I'm saying that we have a extreme overtime budget. We also have 2 police officers being investigated for shooting an unarmed person. We have another officer that is on leave under a child porn investigation. I think it's worth asking what the other person is, but if we want to just blindly say, yeah, we're good, hopefully they'll figure it out internally.
Well,
I think it's
counselors.
What?
I don't even think council members.
No,
I think that there is certain state law in terms of employees and when they are not when there is still an investigation pending,
Yeah.
that means we don't know yet. And when it is done, we will know.
And David, I'm really not trying to be difficult. I honestly, without my
No.
HR manager
Yeah.
here, I don't entirely know what I'm at liberty to share.
No,
and to
I
disprove.
understand. I guess I'm just like, I was just wondering because it's, again, we've learned about other, I mean, I don't know, people like, I don't know. Yeah.
I appreciate you asking, David. I had the same question.
Sure.
I mean,
And I
yeah,
wanted to be, and I was trying to be transparent and honest. It's not share numbers that are inaccurate. I'm sorry that I've created maybe more anxiety than I should have, but.
Yeah, and how many non-police officers in the city of Milwaukie are under administrative leave right now under pending investigations?
I'm not going to answer that question. Again, I think that,
I don't know. Is it none? I don't know. I was just curious if there are.
at this point, I'm not able to answer that question.
Okay, just curious. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I guess I would like to make one comment because I do think that the Budget Committee's concern with police staffing has to do with being under because of these events that have occurred. And I would just hope that we would focus on the budgetary issues rather than the investigative issues at this meeting.
Oh, definitely. I agree. All of my questions, and I sent my questions to Michael in advance of this, are all related to whether it's, paid administrative leave, which is a budget-related area, how it affects overtime, because all of this does affect overtime. Yeah, it does. So all of these questions are related to that. But as we all know, it is going to be a much longer investigation into someone's death than it would be into a minor something or other. I think that's reasonable, but if you think it's not, I understand. Okay, but yes, yeah, my questions are all related to the budget.
Does anybody else have a comment? Question?
I guess I will just say, I am not privy to what's going on in the investigations, but I think we all hope the investigations wrap up sooner rather than later. We all would like to have the ability to fill positions and have people not be on extended, administrative leave. So, yeah.
Is that all?
That is it from me. It is over to Michael next.
Okay, so Michael, we will now have the quarterly update.
I just wanted to start out with an update from last meeting, a pot of gold update. We are continuing to search for the pot of gold, but have unable to find it as of yet. But just wanted to let everybody know that we're continuing to look for that. I wanted to speak briefly on the 2024 audit. I know that we have an audit committee for this, but because we go through budget, I just wanted to share with you guys that we just wrapped up our 2024 audit. This year, we had new auditors, Moss Adams, who came in, who were fantastic to work with. The city received a clean audit report. For the first time in 3 years that I've been here, we completed the audit by the 12/31/24 deadline, that we didn't have to do any extensions, which is great. So much kudos to Matt Deeds and Judy Serio for helping organize all this, doing all of our work papers. There's a lot behind the scenes that we have to do to prepare for the audit. And this year we were lined up, ready to go. Our new auditors were ecstatic with us having all the schedules ready to go. So major kudos to everybody in finance and Matt and Judy for helping out with that. Our ACFR document is online now. You can see it on the finance webpage.
ACFR means?
an annual concept comprehensive financial report. Sorry, you caught me on that one. I will say that for the last 10 plus years, we've received the GFOA award for the ACFR document, which is something that we should be very proud of. We are just wrapping up the final touches on the PAFR document. Don't ask me what the acronym for that is. Yes. Peoples. And we are going to put that out here in the coming weeks. And that's just a 10-page document that's more geared for citizens and residents of the city to kind of look for and see, to look at the financials of the city in kind of a more summary level.
Will you make an announcement of that when it's available?
Yeah, we'll put it on our website.
But putting it on your website doesn't tell me that it's available.
Yes, maybe we could do something in the pilot or something like that.
Or one
too.
of the, the pilot would be good, or,
So last year, I'll say that I went around and did an NBA tour with it last year, kind of trying to promote it. So I'm hoping that the positive feedback from that kind of keeps going and residents are kind of looking for it and know what it is we're putting out.
if you did those sessions with the neighborhood associations, a notice to them that it's available might be helpful.
Yeah, we can let them know.
So are they done, the ACFR and PAFR done every year or just at the end of a budget cycle?
Every year.
Every year, okay.
Yeah. And something, this kind of leads into the next slide. But when we go through and we do our audit, we true up a lot of our outstanding balances and things for the audit, because as we're going through and we're doing accruals and everything, we do it on a yearly basis, much more so than a quarterly basis. And Leslie and I were kind of chatting offline about, she was asking about seeing more detail and more information in some of these quarterly packets. In response to that, I wanted to introduce that we're bringing out a new Socrata system to the city website. This is coming in July. And this is something that Westland currently has now that's going to tie into our Tyler technology accounting system. And it's going to show on a department level more of revenue and expenses of where we're at. And I hope give you and the community more transparency into seeing where the finances of the city are on I don't want to say a real-time basis, but a much faster basis than what we're doing now. So thank you, Leslie, for suggesting this. And our anticipated go-live date is July 1.
That's great. I can't tell you how happy I am to hear that we are actually doing this. And I just wanted to say to the committee, actually, that part of my discussion with Michael has been that when we look at our quarterly report, we have a very sort of, we have a general fund schedule, but it doesn't give us details of the different departments in the general fund. The majority of our report is for the special funds, and yet the majority of our concern is for the general fund. And once this is there, I'm hoping we have maybe a link in the quarterly report. So anybody that wants to go in and look at particular departments, they will be able to do that without our staff having to do a lot of work to get us there. So thank you all very much.
We're excited to roll that out. Going to next slide. This is just kind of a second quarter fund overview by the different funds. I'll dive into them deeper as we get along here, but I just wanted to point out that at the beginning of the fiscal year, we were at a $75 million fund balance overall through the city. And we've grown to just over 79 million. A lot of that is because of timing of revenues that we receive. We receive property taxes mostly in the second quarter. We receive a lot of business license renewal in that second quarter. So it's a very cash revenue heavy quarter that we then use to pay expenses through the third and fourth quarter. Starting out with the general fund revenues. As I said before, property tax revenues, we receive most of it in December. We've received 92% of our property taxes to date. In January through March, we get anticipated people that are paying on, I believe, a quarterly basis. Those little percentages come in during that time. For franchise fees, I have a slide prepared next, but we're a little low on that now because we're getting these on, through PGE, we're getting part of it quarterly now and part of it annually. And for Northwest Natural, I believe we get that. We haven't gotten all of the franchise remittances back yet. We don't see any hesitation of that coming up. It's just we haven't received them yet in the first and second quarter. Business license fees, we've collected 97% of fees so far year to date. Our business license renewal goes on January 1 is the deadline that everybody, it's not the deadline, but it's the goal of when we want people to renew. We give a deadline, I believe, end of February, so we're still collecting those fees. But I think it's encouraging that we've received 97% of what we've budgeted to date. And then finally, I just wanted to point out the investment earnings. The interest rate has been higher than what we budgeted. So right now, we're kind of seeing I don't want to say windfall, but increased revenue from that. That's something that won't continue into the future. I think rates might fall, but for the first quarter, it's been high, and I just wanted to point that out. The next slide kind of shows a 5-year comparison of franchise fees. And I just want to point out that this is through FY24. And the council made an increase in the right-of-way fee for PGE and Northwest Natural from 5 to 8% starting July 1, which is fiscal year 2025. So we haven't seen the impacts of what that increase will be yet. I can just speak personally that on my bill, that it was at for my PGE bill, it was $2.50 that I was paying. And now on my last bill, it was $8.50. So they are collecting more money. We just haven't seen what the payout of that is yet. And we're continuing to monitor it.
That sounds like more of an increase than we gave them.
I think it's also because PGE's rates have gone up considerably.
Yes.
So the city portion went up. We were from that 3%, but I think what you're also speaking to, Michael, is the PGE rate in general went significantly higher, and then we get a percentage of gross revenues on the
And
total.
also, we've had much more energy use in the Osborne house lately.
So when you said it went from $2 to $8, you were not talking about the specific line item that PGE has on your bill, or were you? That's what I thought you were talking about.
I was, and it was roughly 2.5 to 8. But it's on a percentage basis.
Right.
I'm just letting you guys know that PGE is charging this fee on their bills. And we haven't looked at what the cash revenue income is from that, but we are. We're continuing to monitor that. And as the remittances come in, we will look into that.
I think I sent you this question in advance, but is the franchise fee based on their revenue, or is it based on the actual energy usage totals?
Based on gross revenue.
Gross revenue.
Gross revenue.
Okay. So why did it go down? Why did it go down between 20 23 and 24. I get that, our new raised one isn't.
We were noodling on that. We don't know if it's because there was a particularly cold winter in FY '23, and so revenues were higher then, or if something in their rate structure.
I mean, there was a big increase from 22 to 23.
So something may have happened 23 that caused, or perhaps natural gas prices in that market were much higher, and then the percentage of gross revenues would have been higher. But it's a weird one, but it's definitely based on gross revenue.
So I would just like to make a comment also from my experience. I had solar panels put on my house some years ago. And during the months in which happened in the early years, it's not happening now, but during the months in which I generated all the electricity that I used, my PGE bill was a single charge for my two-way meter. It was like $12, something like that. But what occurred to me when I started thinking about it was that I paid none of those federal and state and city fees at all when I had solar panels. And, to the degree that they are reducing that, I'm paying less, which is a factor that the city may not have included in considering that budgeting for that fee, to the degree that solar it picks up.
Something else I want to point out on here is telecom and Comcast. As you can see, their franchise fees are falling. We were trying to noodle with this today with Peter. Where I think this is coming out is there's cable that's in the ground for Comcast and internet, and I think that a lot of this is going wireless. I'm no expert, but there's 5G and there's Starlink and all this. And all I can tell is that these franchise fees are falling, as you can see from 2020 to 2024. What I'm hoping is that the increase that we did in the PGE and Northwest Natural right-of-way fee will somewhat offset this overall for franchise fees. There was also the Beaverton litigation with Comcast, and I'm not an expert on that either. I just know that it's falling and we see it. So we're just trying, when we did the budget, we budgeted for a downward trend, but I just want to call it out to everyone. Okay, next slide. General fund expenditures. Later on, we're going to talk about a proposed budget adjustment that we're looking to make. Last year, when we were going through the budget process, we were also going through contract negotiations with both MPDA and ASME. And also at the time, we weren't entirely sure of what PERS increases were going to be and other benefits. So we made assumptions in the general fund expenditures. A lot of those are after we've gone through and concluded these negotiations. The COLA and the benefit increases have come about. The retro pays have come across in the second quarter of last year. So we're showing all of the costs from those negotiations in this expense. And to be honest, for personnel services, it's pretty tight. A lot of these are at or near 100%. We're aware of that. And that's why we're proposing the budget adjustment later that we can get into a little bit to kind of relieve this. As we were going through the budget process, we put a portion of funds into contingency. So as we are, we put a portion of funds into contingency for what we didn't know. And now that we know, we want to make a slight budget adjustment to true up a lot of these departments and make it real to actual.
Makes sense to me. I just have a question. I'm not sure I understood you. Did you say that the expenses from last year are being reflected in this year's first quarter report? Is that what you said?
I think what he was saying was we adopted the contract in late fall and we did retro pays before the end of the year. So all of that retro pay is reflected here in the Q2 actuals.
Yes. It wasn't in
Okay.
Q1 because
It wasn't in Q1 because it wasn't
Q1.
decided yet.
Exactly.
Okay, I got it.
So we can go to next slide. Police overtime costs. I know this is on everyone's radar. It's on my radar. Chief Burdick, Emma, and I constantly look at this. This chart shows kind of where we are actuals and projected. The base red line is the monthly budget that we've kind of projected. The yellow-ish color is actuals. There's a lot of peaks and valleys in there. As kind of to David's point, as we have officers and we put them on paid leave, we do not get savings from that. And in turn, the time that the police officers are out on duty, we have to fill in from within, and that costs us more money, which is reflected here. Chief Burdick is really trying to look at this, and in December, they went to a 12-hour shift, 3 days a week. In December, it was looking good that we think we've got it under control. In January, it peaked itself up. I don't have the answer of why that peaked up, but we're still continuing to monitor it. I think this speaks to why it's important for us to go out and look for, to find additional FTEs to backfill into the police department. Because if we fill this with staff on regular time, it cuts down on on overtime costs greatly and is a savings to the city. I said a lot there, and I just want to make sure I was clear and everybody kind of follows or has any questions.
Is the issue that there are no, I thought the issue was that we're unable to hire as fast as we have vacancies and we're unable to fill them, or is the issue that we need more positions?
I think it's an all of the above. I think it is, we were talking to Chief Burdick last week. When he started at the city, which is over 15 years ago, I think our FTE in the police department was 39. Our FTE now is, I believe, 35 budgeted in the police department. So there has been a reduction. We are below what ICMA and other organizations say is the ideal, officer per 1,000 threshold for meeting public safety standards. So I do think there's both a need, and we hear a lot too. If we could clone Glenn, our behavioral health specialist. He alone has, I think, done a tremendous amount to reduce some caseload from our other sworn officers. But hiring another behavioral health specialist is another FTE in the police department. So I think we do need more FTE to be in a more sustainable place. I think then we do still have this recruiting challenge that we are trying and having some success finding ways to, creatively recruit folks. But it's hard nationally to recruit folks to work in the police department. Everyone is owed their due process, and that's why we have the administrative leave process, but it's not, I won't sugarcoat it, it's hard when we have folks on admin leave. And so again, I share the mayor's sentiments of really wanting these things to resolve soon so we can get the folks we are paying back out doing their job. Councilor Khosrowshahi?
Yeah, I'm just curious, do you know, and maybe it's in here, I didn't see it, but I'm just curious how much last year was, how much total was the cost of overtime last year?
I have a spreadsheet here. I can tell you for the biennium.
Perfect.
So it was 821,000 for the biennium.
It's going to use another word, but
Can I ask what is complicated about converting one of the open FTEs to a behavioral health position?
That's a great question. That I don't know if I have a great answer right now, but I want to get back to you on. I don't, I think part of it is this idea of minimum staffing for sworn officers. And so one of the reasons, we've gone to the 312 model is we do just have a statutorily required, like we have to have this many folks on working 24/7.
They're on patrol.
On patrol. And I don't know, I will kind of plead some ignorance here. I don't know if the behavioral health specialist it can be a part of that staffing or not. So I'll need to educate myself on that. But yeah, let me talk to the chief and get back to you. It's a very good question.
And can you tell me where the patrolling requirements come from?
Again, I believe it's a requirement. I don't know if it's from state statute or if it's something else, but I'll follow up on that too.
Okay. Yeah. I just wonder, I'm like, at what point do we get more creative?
Yeah.
What are the limits of our creativity? 'Cause
Sure.
That's where I'm
Totally. Yeah.
get.
Well, and I think that there may be, the city has funded Glenn's position in the budget, but there has been talk for a couple of years now that the county will fund a second position. And I think we really need to push that conversation forward.
I can give an update on that. So we have a great partnership with Love One, wonderful organization. And as the mayor mentioned, we had negotiated with the county that they would fund a Milwaukie-specific housing support specialist position that was originally going to be through Central City Concern. We, for a variety of reasons, just weren't finding success with that model. So recently the county went back out with a kind of mini RFP to find another provider. They selected Love One to be that provider, which is great. The person who's taken that role is Don Holden, he feels like a member of our Team Milwaukie family. He's just a wonderful person, but he was already also supporting us from Love One. So right now I feel like we're a little bit net neutral in our resourcing. So we're working with Love One to make sure, they can backfill Don's previous role and that still is a resource that can be located in Milwaukie and supporting our community. Councilor Kosarabadi?
yeah, just it's a great point too, getting more creative. But if I'm not mistaken though, Glenn he's not really equipped to respond to every call. Like if it's a break-in or assault or anything like that, he's not going on that call, right?
Absolutely.
He's going more on like crisis situations.
He's going on
mental
crisis, yes. Absolutely.
health. Thank you.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, next slide. I'm going to go through some of these funds a little quick because there hasn't been much change to them. The debt service fund is very healthy. Debt payments go out in December and June of each year. So we kind of build up this account through the year and then in June pay it down. So that's healthy. The construction excise tax, next slide. Again, it's a healthy fund. I just wanted to point out here that this isn't, when we budget, we're trying to anticipate what building is going on in the city, and sometimes that's hard to do. Things that we anticipated coming online was, I think, a second phase of Henley and maybe Coho area being developed. Those type of things haven't materialized yet, like how we budgeted for. So we're under budget in these, but there's a reason for that. I also wanted to point out that as of September 2024, in the Affordable Housing Fund, of this 1.3 million in there, 443,000 is for affordable housing and 819,000 is for economic development. Next slide.
So those two stats aren't showing on this chart. The 1.3 that you see highlighted there, that's the current fund balance. And so, and on our back accounting side, and this is why it's sort of complicated up there in the revenue lines. Some of the money goes into a pot for affordable housing, some of it goes into ECDEV. So separately, we keep track of those two pots, and that's where what Michael was reporting. We do have to remit 15%, I believe, of our CET fund to the state. So 443,000 for affordable housing and 819,000 for economic development.
Now, just a quick question, because, reading this for face value, you're like, dang, there's a lot less for affordable housing than there is for economic development. But I'm assuming it's because we haven't really used a lot of our funds for economic development.
Exactly,
So
and we
building.
Yep, and we gave affordable housing CET funds in the last biennium to the Hillside Project and to Milwaukie Short Stack.
Just in case the 4 people are watching on
Yeah.
YouTube, on face value, they might be like, well, that's twice as much. for
Exactly.
economic affordable housing, but we've spent quite.
We've invested, I think, with 1.3 million of CET money into affordable housing already.
Thank you.
Next slide. Next slide is the building fund. This is a very healthy fund. We currently have an FTE for a building inspector. We cannot fill that at the moment. What that means for us is we're having to go outside to consult and contract for those services, which comes at a greater expense to the city than if we did it in-house. We would love to do this in-house. I know Patrick, the buildings coordinator, would love this. He's trying to find somebody, but as we have building coming into the city and revenues are growing, we still have to do the work. So I just wanted to point that out as you see that materials and services are going higher than budget. It's because we have a lot of building going on in the city.
Speaking of that building inspector, would this be something that maybe, since we're having a hard time gathering from the pool, would the city be able to do some sort of like, hey, if you work with us as a building inspector, we'll help you get certified and then just roll them into the city's?
I know that Patrick, I've asked him about that, and there's different approaches that they're looking at.
Oh, nice.
That's one. I think it's apprenticeship is how we've
Yeah,
talked
right.
about it.
Nice.
I think he's open to that, but he's trying to see what's out there first before we close it.
Thank you.
Well, and that would raise the issue of somebody getting certified and then moving on.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I do think the theme of tonight is creativity. So we are definitely all over the place trying to get creative to make sure we can get good staff.
Next slide, transportation revenues. I just want to point out that a lot of these for state and local gas tax, some of these there's a lag time with that. So they look to be underperforming here, but I'm confident they're not. It's just a lag issue that we'll receive those funds. One thing that I want to point out, and I'm not an expert on this, but in intergovernmental under SAFE Fund, there was a SAFE grant, Safe Routes to School, that we had budgeted for that didn't materialize. I think that's half of the $5.5 million budget that we didn't get, which is a hit to us. But the other piece of it, I believe the $3 million grant from the county, we are on track to get and to do that work. I think what that means for Jen and engineering is that they're just trying to scramble to find other ways to find money to do the projects for the SAFE. Next slide. Transportation expenses. The ending fund balance has grown roughly $4 million. It's still healthy. The reason for this is capital outlay we haven't had the costs come out yet. What's in the pipe ready to go is King Road, Ardenwald North, Harvey Street, and there's a lot of work going on Washington Street right now. All of these projects are either starting or ramping up, And we'll see in the future quarters that these capital spending will increase and eat into the transportation fund. The good news is engineering is fully staffed, so they're prepared and equipped to do all this work, and they're going to have a busy spring. Next slide is just a list. I just wanted to show, like, this is $4 million of transportation products or projects that are all in the pipeline, ready to go. They have the projects identified. It's just getting the contracts done and beginning the work.
I'm sorry, these amounts don't seem right to me.
Well,
I mean, like Harvey Street,
they
the
could
difference between Harvey Street and Washington Street, or
I think this is remaining
is this just
contract.
design money, not construction?
This is what's remaining as of, I believe, December 31st. This isn't the total contract amount.
Okay.
I think this was to illustrate, what we still think will be obligated, or what we expect to spend by the end of the biennium.
Okay.
still.
Yes.
Okay.
And if I can help, and Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, because this was one of my questions that I had to Michael. Pages 47 to 53 of the budget kind of shows what percent of the funds of each portion have been spent. Is that right? So that would provide more clarity for each of these individual projects?
I believe so. Tell me again those pages.
It's the CIP.
It's the CIP.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, 47 to,
Yes.
so yeah, that is it
That's
is
correct.
a nice breakdown for each project of what the expenditures are. I thought that was really a very helpful way to break down what's remaining with these.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a good point. All right, going on, water fund. The water fund is currently at 7 million. If we go to the next slide, again, I was trying to illustrate what obligated contract amounts are remaining on these. Stanley Reservoir is the big one that's coming down. That's nearly $2 million left on that contract.
So my recollection is this obligated funds chart at the end is what was added in a couple of years ago when John Stoll was saying, why are these so big and we don't know what's actually obligated? That's
Right.
what this is doing.
Correct. We're trying to say we understand that there's big balances in these. We're also trying to say that there's projects and maintenance that we have to do. And we're trying to show that these funds are obligated for that maintenance. I think Peter can talk to rate structures and everything, but we're trying to keep our rate structure on a even plane line so that we don't have to raise rates in the middle to do different maintenance of projects. And again, to Leslie's point, that this was there to show that there are projects and maintenance that we're doing in order to, that we have identified costs for the funds.
They're already obligated.
Yes.
So last week, we approved an upspend for Stanley Reservoir and for one of the wells. So does this reflect that amount? It doesn't.
No.
Okay.
This is as of the end of December,
Oh, right.
and I believe that that's coming down in January.
So and this is just for my own knowledge, if you take that and deduct it from the 7.1 that's currently in there, that means that we have roughly another 3.5 that's not obligated? Or is the whole 7.1 been obligated?
I believe you're correct. I believe that this is what's obligated in terms of capital expenses for those. I don't know, I believe there's probably some personnel costs and some other material services costs that might get also obligated, but these are the big capital costs that you could subtract from that 7 to get the remaining fund balance.
Thank you.
I would add too, like the obligated is that we got it queued up, ready
Yeah,
to go.
right.
There's other wish list stuff that I'm sure Peter and Jen have a wish list of other things that they want to do.
Right.
And that costs money as well. That
Yeah,
would be into this.
absolutely.
Okay, wastewater fund has a balance of 7.3 million. And on the next slide, again, we have 2.6 or 2.7 million in obligated projects that we've identified for spending.
You skipped a storm. We're on waste.
Oh, I see. Storm.
1.3.
Sorry.
I was gonna say, we only have 1.3.
1.3.
Yeah,
Okay.
my bad. I went a little
Okay.
too far ahead.
Okay.
My screen is much smaller than what you guys see. The stormwater fund has a balance of 6.3 million with obligations of 2.7 million. And the SDC fund has a fund balance of 3.2 million. I will say that we're getting ready to remit stormwater, I believe it's stormwater or wastewater deposits to Wes that we do on a biannual basis. So that will affect this fund a little bit.
But
And
yeah,
it's wastewater.
it should just be wastewater. Yeah, we shouldn't be giving them stormwater.
Thank you, Judy, for correcting me. The last slide I just wanted to bring your attention to, I know that it doesn't pertain necessarily to this committee, but the URA. I just wanted to show that there's an ending fund balance of $8 million in this account. Emma, Joseph, and I are going to meet in the coming weeks to kind of strategize out a better budget and kind of identify better ways to use the URA.
Yeah, I would say more detailed way. I think that, we have an adopted MRC budget, which is great, and it aligns with our URA 5-year action plan. I mentioned that council just set a goal of economic development, which is really exciting. And I think through the goal action planning process, council will be articulating some more concrete, or I should say, the MRC will be articulating some more concrete sort of objectives and priorities for that, which will allow us to go back and I think develop a bit of a more detailed look at the URA 5-year action plan and budget. So it's a healthy fund, but I think there is a lot of good work that we'll be programming that money to do.
So we will see that in the budget committee in the next meeting?
In the next, either in the next meeting or the meeting after. We just set these goals and we want to give council some good time to set some action plan steps. But the MRC CAC, so that's the Milwaukie Redevelopment Commission Community Advisory Council, MRCAC is what we call it. The MRCAC has not met for a while. They met last in the spring of '24, where they were very instrumental in helping us set up our business improvement grant program. I'm excited to share that I think we've given 11 business improvement grants through the URA, which is wonderful. So that's, money that's been obligated, but I think it's now time to bring that committee back together, to work with the MRC, and to figure out how we're going to program a lot more of these dollars in investments in the downtown and URA areas.
Hell yeah, that committee's awesome. I'm on
Go,
it.
David. Mayor, did you have a question?
I did. So this 8 million is not all direct URA earnings. There's some, we took some debt, right?
Yes,
We did take
we
debt.
did. In 2023.
Yes.
So where does that show? I mean, how do we?
There's the
So there's no debt being taken in this biennium. There's no revenue line for it. So I think it is just reflected in the fund balance that we started the biennium with. But yes,
And how much was the debt?
the total tranche of debt was, I believe, 22 million. The exact breakdowns between SAFE, SSMP, and URA, I can't remember off the top of my head. Do you remember?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but we'll have it for you before the end
Because
of the.
Judy's back there typing.
It was $8 million
$8 million.
It was $8 million of debt?
for the MRC, for the URA. That wasn't the whole bond.
Right. That was
No, I knew it was only a part of the bond, and I guess I thought it was smaller than that, but, because I mean, and our total balance is 8 million now.
Let me dig into that a little more
Yeah.
and see.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
So just to be clear, you're gonna reconcile for us the 8 million that was in debt as to whether or not that is or isn't, and to what degree it might be included in the 8 million fund balance here.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Is that clear?
Yeah, it's clear.
I mean, it makes some sense that, you would see that we're anticipating expenditures for this biennium of 1.2 million and revenues of 1.7. So, there's a little offset there, but that, yeah, we'll
Some of
figure.
it may have been
come
spent
back.
already. Okay, I got it.
So the 1.7 is what our direct property tax payment into the URA.
It's what we're
is
accruing. Mhm.
That's what we're accruing.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Next slide. So a year ago, we went through a forecast that looked pretty gloom. In years 4 and 5, we were in the red. This is a living budget estimate, and it's always moving. The good thing I can say is after we're through the second quarter of this biennium, it's not as bad. We're not showing that we're in the red. We're still in the black in year 5. But the thing I just wanted to point out is to highlight it that our expenses are outpacing our revenues over the next 5 years. So what I'm saying is that there's still a revenue challenge. It's not as bad as we had a year ago. We're still monitoring it, but we're not in the red after the 5 years.
And I'll just share, with forecasts are very important and very squirrely things. They assume you're spending 100% of what you put in your budget. And we never spend 100% of what we put in our budget. We're spending more, close to 100% now that we have really high labor costs. But there's that's a pretty conservative assumption that you're going to spend everything. And then my finance team does a good job of being, I think, conservative as well in revenue projections. So again, you're kind of always assuming the worst, and then every quarter I'm asking Michael and his team to fine tune it. So it is good news that we are kind of out of the red as we get a 25% of this biennium done, 2 quarters of 8 quarters. But I still think we have a structural problem when you see that we are spending more than we are taking in. So we still, the importance of those financial stability moves of finding some new revenue streams is still there.
Lisa, do you want to talk?
Oh, no.
I really like this chart, and I especially like to hear that it is an active chart that's being updated. And so my request is, can we get it in our quarterly report?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We could
I
have
mean,
that.
as a regular section of the quarterly report that we look at that.
I would just caution that it's a 5-year
Right.
kind of estimate.
Oh, yeah,
but
no, I
yes,
think that's exactly right. But the fact, I mean, I think, I was way back in the dark ages, we had a forecast that was never updated to active stuff. So the fact that you have this, I think, is a great tool.
Yeah, I really appreciate the finance team. They do a lot of legwork to run these actuals and put it into the algorithm to form it forward. So I appreciate it.
I want to follow up. The URA debt was 5 million.
That makes more sense.
Yes.
Okay.
Next slide. We've heard a lot of talk over the last couple weeks of federal funding freeze, and I've got a lot of questions on how does that impact Milwaukie? And next slide. I did a little bit of digging, and this is the last 2 years of our revenue breakdowns. Most of the city's funds come in through property tax, state, county fees, IGA agreements. Not much. So for our operating income, not much comes from federal, if at all. Most of all that comes from county. Where it does impact is capital projects. I just kind of wanted to highlight too that I did put in intergovernmental that it's 14 to 16%. Of that, the federal portion is probably under 2%. Most of that is to state and county. So next slide.
I have a question though.
Yeah.
Do we know the degree to which our state and county revenues are in fact passed through federal?
That is an excellent question that we're trying to find out. We're going to find the impacts, I'm sure, in the next couple months, but I don't know a quick answer to that.
I can give you an example on the next slide. You know, Michael did a good job putting together sort of some of our projects that we think are at risk. And that one that you see there, the railroad improvements, which is Railroad Avenue improvements, that we have a RUFA grant for that. RUFA is Regional Flexible Funds allocation. It's through Metro, dispersed through Metro. But my understanding is that RUFA has, you know, it's upstream, it's federal money. So federal money drives up, RUFA money drives up.
I just want to be clear that the operating funds of the city aren't directly impacted by this, which is a huge relief. But we're always gauging, and I know that there's a lot of GFOA messages and things they're trying to keep us apprised of how this is all working out and settling out. So as we find out more information, we'll share it with you.
I didn't realize we had federal money for urban forest management plan. What's that?
Yeah, that's might be another one where I believe we got the $100,000 grant through the Oregon Department of Forestry, but we're pretty sure upstream that is from the U.S. Forest Service. So again, this is one where it was a bummer. We got awarded it, you know, the week before the executive order came out, freezing federal funding. And in a lot of these ones where we have a verbal confirmation or an email saying congrats, but we don't have any contractual document signed, we're nervous that we're just not going to see those dollars. Fingers crossed.
Any other questions on federal funding? If you have any that come up or come to mind, email me. I'm happy to answer.
Oh, William?
Is there any risk with using the ARPA dollars for your emergency management position?
There's not, because that money is already,
In the bank?
it was A, going to go poof on January 1, and B, we were already, we got all those I's dotted and T's crossed before the end of the year.
The money is in the
But
bank.
great question. Yep.
Next, Cereghino Farms. I believe in 2019, we did an agreement with, I believe, the developers of Cereghino Farms to phase in them annexing into the city and doing a slow, staggered tax rate to bring them online. In past, the finance team, we didn't turn on the faucet for the tax rate in 23 and 24 and 25. There was a lot of turnover in this during this time. To be honest, I don't think that we knew that we were supposed to go to the county and tell them that we needed to turn on this revenue. I got a call a couple months ago from the county saying, hey, do you know that you need to declare, it's called an LB50 in order to turn this on? The amount of revenue that we have foregone is roughly $42,000 from fiscal year 23 and 24. The good news is I'm bringing it to everyone's attention here so that we are with this, when we declare our tax rates, we're including this in there. I've worked with the county to make sure that we're going to turn this on. In the grand scheme of things, over next year, we're going to bring in 44,000 projected, whereas in 29-30, when we get to 100%, we'll bring it in almost 120,000. Unfortunately, we can't go back and get that money from the past. It's a disappointment to me that we didn't catch this sooner, but also in the grand scheme, it's not a huge impact to the city's revenue. I just wanted to call it to your attention and show that in 25, 26, I'm prepared to go to the rate, which was outlined in the 10-year plan in 2019 of 42.9%.
Does that mean that you will be able to spread what was a 10-year into an 8-year or whatever it is?
I can't.
Will at the end of it, will we recoup the full amount or not?
No.
No, okay.
But on the good thing going forward is after 10 years, we will be collecting roughly 120,000 ongoing, per year, which if they didn't annex into the city, we would not be collecting that portion for the city.
I mean, this is, Cereghino Farms was kind of an odd thing, but I do think there are other parcels on our border where we could do something similar. So I guess I hope you guys are making a structural fix to start tracking this kind of thing. Because this was a huge negotiated thing. The planning director and Justin was in all these negotiations that nobody was like.
Yeah. We fully and humbly admit this is a process improvement lesson learned. I mean, Michael and I weren't here when this deal was created, and I actually really appreciate Michael came to my office right away when he realized this, and we want to be transparent with you all. But yeah, this is, I mean, in small cities, it's not an excuse, but in small cities, you know, when you make these sort of long-term things, you've got to document them and build the structural things in so that you don't just rely on one person remembering, because I think we had a different finance director most of the years that you see on that table to date. So,
and kudos to the county because they're the ones that alerted us to this, or else we wouldn't have known going forward. So Dina at the county has been very helpful to me, kind of bringing me up to speed, learning all these things. And I think going forward, we definitely know now how this works.
And it does beg a question too on if this is the right kind of deal to be cutting with developers when they're thinking about annexing into the city.
That's actually what go ahead, Mayor.
Well, I was just going to say, and it'll be interesting to see if the residents there come out with pitchforks when they have this big bump. I mean, it was supposed to be gradual, but I guess they got 2 years of taxes they didn't have to pay. So
I should note that they've been paying their county taxes and all their bonds and everything else. It's just the city of Milwaukie portion that they were not paying.
Right.
My question was actually, because I clearly wasn't on council when the deal was made, so I'm assuming that was the deal in order to get them to annex, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So from my understanding, we also have a same 10-year deal with Axle Tree, is that correct?
Axle Tree's in the.
No,
I know, but Axle Tree was given a 10-year tax abatement.
They were giving the vertical housing tax exemption,
Right.
I believe. Mm-hmm.
That was a 10-year deal. So when does that go? How does that work? Do we collect anything on that at some point?
So the difference, and I will, I may get some of these details wrong. We can follow up with our community development folks and get back to you. But the difference there is it's less of a gradual re-entry. I think it's just an exemption for the 10-year period. I do think you're right that it's the same issue of we have to certify our property tax rates every year to the county. And there's clearly, as we learned with the Cereghino example, certain things you've got to do to use Mike's metaphor, turn the faucet on. And so I think same thing, you needing to make sure we remember to turn that faucet on when we give, property tax deferrals or exemptions are really good tools for getting some of the things we want. And they take administrative burden to track and make sure we are accurately and adequately, enforcing and not enforcing them.
Yeah, it'd be a better tool to get something more out of it than just a bunch of market rate developed houses that people can't afford. It'd be great if we did a 10-year abatement for something affordable, because I know at Cereghino Farms, nothing you can really afford out there if you're the average Milwaukeean. But I just have an issue with tax abatements on market rate development.
And I'll put this on the follow-up for next meeting of the axle tree and how that works out.
It does strike me that there ought to be some element or schedule where every tax abatement is listed and the time frame and the percentages and everything on a regular basis. I mean, I sort of have an ad hoc knowledge of what the city has granted in that way. And so maybe that would be a schedule that we could see on some regular basis.
It's a great point.
All right, next slide. So going back to what I was speaking about earlier, about we're proposing a budget adjustment. When we did the budget, we were at a time of uncertainty and we didn't know what our labor negotiations were going to be. We didn't know what the PERS rate and the benefit costs were going to be. We know those now for fiscal year 25. So I'm looking to make a budget adjustment for just year one, fiscal year 2025, just to cover those items that we didn't know last year. When we did the budget, we put 1.7 million in the general fund contingency for this. I am looking to, I think next slide. My proposal is to bring 500,000 from the contingency to the general fund up to the department line items to cover these costs. This year, we settled with the ASME union for a 6% COLA, which we just did in year one, which is just now reflected in the general fund. And then for next year, it's a 2-year COLA to start on July 1, and then another mid-year COLA to the start on January 1st of next year. Also, of that 500,000, it includes the emergency management position that we are funding. And there's $138,000 of ARPA funds that we have set aside for that. So we're not dipping into the contingency with all the 500,000, but I just want to give you a good conservative number of what that would be. I'm hoping it's going to be less, maybe around 400,000. And when we have that more up to date, I can circle back with all of you to confirm that number. But I just wanted to give you the heads up that we're looking to move the 500,000 from contingency up into the general fund department budgets.
And just a few more notes on that. So again, this adjustment isn't going to require new revenue because it was already put in our budget as an expenditure, just in a contingency line. It also does not hit the threshold for requiring what's a full supplemental budget. So full, announcements in the paper and hearings. It can be done just as a budget adjustment adopted by resolution with council. Our plan is to prepare that budget adjustment for council at their March 4th meeting to do that adjustment, which makes our books more accurate and reallocates this. On the last slide, you also saw a note about One of our new goals is parks and green space. We currently have a staff person in a limited term job supporting parks that ends at the end of March. We are actively looking at sort of options on if we can extend that position or do something else. So that may get rolled into this budget adjustment. We're not entirely sure as of tonight.
I don't quite follow what Michael was saying about the 500,000 versus the ARPA money.
Yeah.
The ARPA money is a subset of the 500,000 or it's on top of the 500?
The ARPA's on top, so we'll be reflecting that in the adjustment. We will need a little bit of general fund to make that a full FTE. And I think also Peter's going to want to put a little bit of some utility funds to support that emergency management position, but the majority of it will be paid with the ARPA funds. So all of that will be reflected in the adjustment. Michael has taken all of the cost of the labor negotiations, the benefits changes, and then that little piece to put together what he thinks is that $500,000 as a good estimate for what's going to cover that.
I'm hoping we won't need all of it, but I'm just betting conservative. So we don't have to come back and ask again.
And that 138 that won't cover the one employee?
That's for 2 years.
Oh, that's
for
biennium.
biennium.
For biennium, okay, good.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So it would be like the one, okay, never mind, I got you. 500,000.
So, did you have a question, Leslie?
No,
Okay.
I was thinking that we ought to move along and maybe you can address
I got
the
one more
utility
thing.
thing.
Yeah.
This is my final thing of the night. I was going to bring this up at CUAB, but I figured I'd bring it up for all of you. We are planning to make a utility bill format change. And what's on the left is the bill that we currently have that goes out to customers. And that's done through a company called BMS. They're great. They do a great bill. This is a rare time where they do great, but we're switching to something that may not look as great. The reason for that is because we have two systems that we're running utility billing on. We have our Tyler Encode system that does a majority of all our work. Then we send that data to BMS so that they can make this nice bill format this way. By going to Tyler, which is on the right, it allows us to have one software that we're taking all of the invoices straight from the system directly to the customers. Also, when you're going in and you're logging into the pay your bill, it's kind of frustrating to people because you go into one site to look at how much your bill was, and you go into another site, BMS, to pay your bill. We're trying to merge those all into one system, Tyler. The final goal that we're trying to do is to get people to go paperless. And with doing it through Tyler, it's going to be one system where we put all of the information in one spot and have everything to encourage people to go paperless instead of having to ask them twice and to go into two different systems. We're in the early stages of this. July 1 is kind of when we're trying as a goal to put this out. Joe Gardner, our RT director, is doing the legwork now, trying to get the Tyler bill to look as much like the BMS bill as we can. But unfortunately, BMS is great, and Tyler has a lot of standard formats that other cities use, and they don't really accommodate as much customization as we would hope. The city of Sandy is one city that's currently using the Tyler way that's on the right. So it is something that's standard that people can use. It just doesn't look as pretty as the one on the left. William?
Are we expecting a cost savings by cutting out the BMS software?
We are. It's not substantial. That's not the main reason that we're doing this, but there will be a little bit of cost savings with it. I think it's more of administrative saving that we will not, for the customer, they won't have to log into 2 different portals to see how much their bill is and what to pay. And for us, it's just going to be all of the data in one system.
So it's a staff time savings?
Yes.
As well as,
Customer frustration savings.
right.
So will we be sending out the bills now instead of another company?
Yes.
Yes, the city will actually, for the people who get mailed bills, will generate the mail.
Yes,
Okay.
there's still, we're still figuring out how this all works, and there's still going to be a small component for BMS. If you have a paper bill, we're still going to go through BMS to mail that out, but our goal is to get as many people on the paper list because that's going to be emailed directly to them through Tyler.
This project has actually been a long time coming. I remember discussing it years ago, so congratulations.
There's a lot of stuff that's going through finance right now. It's a busy time. Again, I just want to thank Judy and Matt for helping me through all of this and everybody on finance. I think we do really good work and we're trying to find efficiencies where we can. And this is one way that I see to do it. It's just weird that I know the bill on the left looks pretty and it's very nice and we're going to go to this black and white one, but there's reasons for it.
I don't care about the color, but I do feel like that looks more clear to me, but I can't really read. I can't really read the one on the right, so we'll see.
Actually, I think that going to a new bill would offer an opportunity to do some work to teach people how to read their bills. Because even the ones that look good, I talk to people that don't have any idea what's in their bill, you know?
And this is another opportunity for the pilot that I would like to, before we do this, kind of like put a blurb in there, why we're doing it, and kind of give some background on what you should be looking for.
Well, and mailing a form like, this is how to read your new bill, you know?
And also go paperless if you can.
Right. Are we done? Are you done?
That's all, folks.
Sorry, just, I know, one more place thing, dun, dun, dun. I know, I'm scary. But I was just curious, this was one of my questions to Michael in my email that I sent, and I just want to clarify it. While we're talking about all these expenses, again, without saying anything in any detail whatsoever about how a case would go, but if there was a civil lawsuit and the city lost and somebody that they had to pay out, like, you know, I'm making up a number here, but like $100,000. Is that something that is paid through insurance? Is that paid through the general fund? How does that, the union? I don't know. How would that work?
You want to start?
Sure. Okay. It's a great question. We do have insurance, and insurance will cover us up to a limit.
A certain amount, okay.
We meet quarterly with our risk folks who kind of advise on that, and they're, you know, and we also have legal support through our insurance company as well. So it is covered by insurance up to a very high amount. I think it's $10 million.
Okay, perfect.
I just want to add that this is on my radar and this is something that I'm looking at. So I don't know if we could speak the details.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's something that both Emma and I look at.
For sure. And I also just wanted to clarify something earlier. I said it was all budget-related questions I have. I did actually ask one non-budget question, which was, do we know how the guy is doing at the Taco Bell? I know he was in critical condition last time I checked. And I know we're a budget committee and we talk about budgets, but it was a 21-year-old human being.
Right, we're a budget committee, but we're people first, and we absolutely care tremendously about Hunter. The last report I've seen is that Hunter is still in the hospital, but has been awake, and there have been some promising moments. So
Thank you. We wish him
we
the
absolutely
best.
do.
Absolutely.
We absolutely do.
Yeah, we never want anyone to be in any critical condition, especially for that long. Okay, thank you. And then I have one more just minor separate note from all of this, which is just that in my personal life, I've come and talked to the city multiple times on various issues, most recently about Palestine and about a resolution. And I received a really disappointing message from the mayor when we were going to meet to talk about something, I offered to bring a Middle Eastern professor to talk with her about the issue, and she emailed me back saying, I'd prefer they be a Jewish one or something to do with the rise in anti-Semitism, because equating the two, which I think was pretty disappointing and frankly gross. I don't think that anyone in the city government should have religious preferences. And I reported that to the city's, I wanted to pull it up. The city's ethics point, I believe is what it's called. And the city said the investigation into the matter is complete. We followed up with the named party. We've concluded that no personnel policies apply. So I, number one, wanted to say to the council that if there is any way to maybe be more forceful in the future of trying to prevent civil servants and elected members from exerting personal preference towards religion. This was an area that's impacted me very deeply. I'm a Middle Eastern American. I've had lots of family members been killed by the hands of the U.S. government by lots of things. And I mentioned that to the mayor, and the mayor's response was, I'm rather taken back. You're reading an awful lot into a couple of sentences, more or less. That's the general gist of it. And not a, I'm really sorry you lost 7 family members. Anyways, all of this being said, I'm a volunteer in this position, and I don't really have any desire to continue working with the mayor, and I'm extremely disappointed, but I'm resigning from this committee effectively immediately, and I assume that means the utility board as well. So thank you all very much. It's been a pleasure working with most of you, and I want to just give a couple of quick shout outs saying, Michael, it's been really, really cool seeing your growth. I specifically remember the first meeting we had, you were so nervous. Toby had to step in, and it's insane how much you've grown. He's not here today, but I'm very happy that Assistant City Manager Joseph, yeah, I was going to pronounce his last name wrong, sorry. He's been someone who's also genuinely checked in on me, especially about what's been happening in the Middle East and how hard it's been. Also a shout out to Councilor Anderson, who actually met with me at my house to talk to me about the situation. And again, I'm very disappointed in the mayor's messages from the government email, and I hope going forward, it is a learning opportunity to not exert religious preferences. So thank you again, everyone, and all the best. You guys got it under control.
Well, I'm sorry to hear your resignation, and I think, we've had a lot of long email exchanges about this, and I've offered to meet with you, but I can respect your concerns. In fact, we worked together to try and find a speaker at one point in time since then, but I'm sorry that, I think I don't want to try to litigate the matter here, but I'm sorry that you decided to go. I'm sorry that what I felt was, anyway, I'm sorry that my comments are leading you to go. Yeah, I'll just stop with that.
Well, I guess I should say, I am sorry that we're losing you also. I think that you brought a perspective of somebody that understands the numbers that we appreciate, and I appreciate the kind of issues that you've raised.
Thank you.
So I'm shocked, but
Thank you. Yeah.
I respect your decision.
Yeah, and anyone can attest to this for me, especially with this meeting today. I knew I was going to say this going into it, and you see I'm still the one that's asking lots of questions, because I think I really call on the members of the finance committee to ask questions, even if they're uncomfortable, even if they warrant hard responses, because our money is important to us, and things are freaking expensive, and people are really hurting. But yeah, for my mental state, this is what's best for me, and all the best to everyone.
David, I just want to say thank you for your time on the budget committee. Sorry that this is how it's ending. Obviously, we've had a number of conversations about what happened in Palestine. I'm also Middle Eastern and a Muslim, proudly. And I'm sorry that the proclamation wasn't done. I know that one was put together, but not everyone could agree on the language, unfortunately. But I hope this isn't the end of your volunteerism and what you've done for this community and the city. So.
Yep, no worries. I'm still the chair of North Clackamas Parks and Rec Budget Committee and Clackamas Community College's Budget Committee. But yeah, and I just want to point out that, it's as Councilor Khosrabadi just said there, I'm sorry that the proclamation hasn't been had. I'll stop talking, I promise. But I just want to end with a great quote from MLK, which is, "The time is always right to do what's right. You could always be silent as long as you want, but you can always stand up at any single point." The musician or the composer who wrote Amazing Grace, he was a slave ship captain. He realized what he did was wrong and wrote one of, in my opinion, the more amazing songs. And you can always, at any point in the present, say, even if you said something one way before, you can try to fix it going forward. And the time is always right to do what's right. Thank you. I'll stop talking. I move to end the meeting.
Okay, so are there any other items? No? I will now entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I move to end the meeting.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to adjourn the meeting. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? No. Okay, we are adjourned.